Cops arrest black man at his own home seconds. Later, he flashes his FBI badge. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Hands behind your back. Now! The officer's voice split the night like a siren. In front of Atlas Financial Tower, the kind of building that gleams like a crown in the city skyline, 3 uniformed men advanced with cuffs drawn. Their breath came hot, their eyes sharper than their badges. And in the center of it all stood Marcus Hall, trench coat draped over his shoulders, jaw steady, eyes calm. He didn't move. He didn't flinch. The only thing between him and humiliation was silence, and he wore it like armor. One of the officers spat. "You don't belong here. Trespassing at this hour? Thought you could just walk in?" Phones rose from the crowd. A young analyst from across the street whispered to her coworker, "Isn't that the owner?" But the officer barked again, "Step back. This man's under arrest." The words weren't just commands, they were verdicts delivered before a trial. Marcus lowered his gaze to the handcuffs glinting under the blue-red strobe of police lights. They looked almost ceremonial, as if forged for this moment. Still, he didn't move. His voice was even low, deliberate. "Are you sure you want to do this?" The crowd stirred. A woman gasped. Another voice muttered, "He lives here. I've seen him." But the officers weren't listening. One surged forward, the cuff chain clattering like a warning bell. "You people think you can stand anywhere, huh?" The insult landed heavier than the command. Marcus breathed once, deep, as if steadying not just his body but his history. He remembered 20 years earlier being shoved against a wall outside a building he leased. 10 years ago, stopped in a hotel lobby he owned. Different uniforms, same suspicion. Tonight, the script was playing again, but he was ready. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Marcus. The officer raised his cuffs higher, eyes narrow, waiting for resistance. Marcus tilted his head, almost pity in his expression. The crowd pressed closer. A junior employee whispered into her phone, "They're arresting the wrong man." "Oh." And then, the silence cracked. Marcus reached into his coat. Every camera zoomed in, every officer tensed. He pulled out a black leather wallet, flipped it open. Gold letters glared back beneath the lights. FBI. The officer's shout faltered. The handcuffs trembled. The crowd gasped, like the air itself had been ripped open. Marcus's tone sharpened, cutting clean through the night. Last chance to think twice. The badge gleamed under the flood of blue and red. For a split second, the cuffs froze midair. Then came the denial. "That's fake," one officer barked, his voice cracking with more fear than certainty. He shoved forward, knuckles tight around the steel cuffs. The second officer echoed, "Nice trick, but it doesn't work here. You're under arrest." The crowd erupted murmurs, gasps, camera shutters. A woman in a gray coat whispered, "He just showed FBI." Another voice argued back, "If he was FBI, why would they be arresting him?" Suspicion rippled like static. Marcus stood anchored, the badge steady in his hand. His tone dropped, calm but sharp. "You just escalated from unlawful detention to obstructing a federal officer." The words hit like cold water. One officer blinked, unsettled. The other sneered. "Save the speeches. I've seen people flash fake creds before." His laugh was thin, hollow. "You think a leather wallet scares me?" Behind him, a younger cop shifted uneasily. His gaze flicked to the badge, then to Marcus's face. For a heartbeat, his jaw slackened. He muttered under his breath, "It looks real." The sergeant snapped, "Stay in line." The command was harsh, a wall built against doubt, but the cracks were showing. From the crowd, a phone lifted higher. A young man with glasses spoke louder than he intended. "I work in this building. That's Agent Hall. He owns half the tower." Heads turned. The murmurs grew louder, less afraid now. Marcus didn't smile. He didn't need to. He simply slid the badge closer to the sergeant's face. The gold seal glared beneath the streetlight. "You put your hands on me again," Marcus said quietly, "and you won't just lose your job. You'll answer to Washington." The sergeant's lips trembled. His grip on the cuffs faltered. But pride pushed through. "I don't care who you say you are," he barked. louder this time, as if volume could erase the truth. "Step away from the building!" Marcus didn't move. His silence carried more weight than any shout. The young officer swallowed hard. His voice broke into the standoff. "Sarge, maybe we should verify first. Just check." Gasps rippled. The crowd pressed closer, phones glowing like torches in the night. The sergeant's glare swung to his subordinate, venom sharp. "Not another word." "Ems it." But the seed was planted. Doubt was spreading. And in the middle of it all, Marcus Hall stood unshaken, trench coat swaying lightly in the night breeze, badge gleaming like a verdict waiting to fall. The sergeant's voice tore through the air. "Enough! Put your hands where I can see them. You don't belong here." Those words, "you don't belong here," hung like smoke, bitter and thick. The crowd recoiled. A woman clutched her purse tighter. Someone muttered, "Did he really just say that?" Marcus lifted his eyes slowly, calm as stone. He had heard that phrase before. At 25, outside a hotel lobby he owned. At 32, in a boardroom where his signature paid their salaries. Different places, same sentence. A lifetime of being told he didn't belong. Tonight, it was written all over the cuffs glinting in the sergeant's hands. But he didn't shout. He didn't break. He simply asked, voice low, "On what grounds?" The sergeant stepped closer, chest heaving. "Trespassing. Fraud. Maybe worse. Guys like you always running some game." His spit hit the pavement with the last word. The insult lit a fire. From the crowd, a young woman's voice cracked. "That's harassment. We all saw his badge." She raised her phone higher. Next to her, a man in a suit shook his head. "This is disgusting." At his own building? The energy shifted, anger spreading like sparks catching dry leaves. The younger officer spoke again, softer but firmer this time. "Sarge, it's not right. That's a federal ID. We should call it in." The sergeant spun on him, veins sharp at his temple. "Fall in line or you're off this detail." The threat sliced sharper than the cuffs. The younger man swallowed but didn't step back. His silence was its own defiance. Then came the final shove. The sergeant slammed the cuffs forward, metal cold against Marcus's wrist. Gasps erupted. Someone screamed, "He's FBI! Stop!" Phones shot higher, flashes blinding the night. Marcus didn't resist. He stood anchored, voice cutting through the chaos. "You've made your mistake twice. Now I make my call." From his coat pocket, he pulled a phone. One button, one name. "Evans," he said, his voice steady. On the other end, a woman answered without hesitation. "Protocol 1, activated. I'm logging this live." The sergeant froze, his grip loosening. The younger officer blinked. "Protocol 1?" he whispered. The crowd buzzed. Marcus lifted his gaze, eyes locked on the sergeant. "Every word you've spoken," he said, calm as judgment, "is already in federal record." And just like that, the cuffs didn't look like power anymore. They looked like evidence. The cuffs dangled at Marcus's wrist, but the weight wasn't his to carry anymore. It was theirs, the officers, the sergeant. The system that thought it could erase him with one order barked loud enough to drown the truth. The sergeant leaned in, close enough that his breath clouded the night air between them. "You think a badge makes you untouchable? You're nothing but a thug in a coat." The word landed heavy. The crowd erupted gasps, curses, shouts. A man near the steps of Atlas Financial Tower shouted back, "He showed you his FBI credentials. You can't say that." A young woman trembled, phone raised, her voice shaking but strong. "We're recording everything, every word." Marcus didn't flinch. His voice remained even, surgical. "Keep talking. You're building my case for me." The younger officer's jaw tightened. He muttered just loud enough, "This isn't right." But the sergeant snapped, "Quiet." His desperation reeked louder than authority now. Then, from Marcus's phone, a crisp voice cut through the chaos. His assistant, Evans. "Agent Hall, Protocol 1 is active. Audio and video feeds are live streaming to headquarters. The chain of custody is confirmed." The words fell like gavels. The sergeant blinked, thrown off balance. "What did you just say?" Marcus turned slightly, voice calm but carrying. "It means your actions are no longer local business, they're federal evidence." The murmurs swelled. The crowd shifted closer, no longer just spectators but witnesses. A man in a suit shouted, "You'll lose your badges over this." Someone else chimed in, "Let him go now." But pride is a stubborn anchor. The sergeant's face flushed red, his tone defiant. "I don't care who you call. This is my city, my watch." He jerked the cuffs higher, as if clinging to power slipping through his fingers. Marcus leaned forward, voice low. razor sharp. Not anymore. For a moment, silence wrapped the street. The police lights flickered. Sirens in the distance blurred into background hum. And in that silence, the balance shifted. The younger officer finally stepped forward, eyes steady. "Sarge, we need to stop. This isn't procedure. He's telling the truth." The sergeant glared at him, but his authority cracked. The crowd was no longer afraid, it was awake. Marcus raised the badge once more, gold seal burning under the strobe of red and blue, his words carved into the night. "You tried to strip me of dignity in front of my own building. You forgot one thing. I don't answer to you. You answer to me." Gasps turned into cheers. Phones lifted higher. And for the first time that night, the sergeant looked smaller than the man he tried to shackle. The crowd was no longer a backdrop, it was a chorus. Voices rose, sharp and unshaken, cutting through the night air. "Let him go. He's FBI, we saw it." "You're the criminals here!" Phones hovered like fireflies, recording every twitch of guilt across the sergeant's face. What began as scattered gasps was now a wall of sound. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He stood anchored, trench coat swaying lightly in the breeze, badge gleaming steady in his hand. The silence around him was louder than the crowd itself. The younger officer finally spoke up, voice firmer now, no longer a whisper. "Sir, this isn't right. We need to verify. I've seen federal credentials before his are real." The sergeant whipped his head around, eyes blazing. "You're undermining me in front of civilians?" His words dripped with venom, but his stance wavered. The younger man didn't retreat. He took one step closer to Marcus, not the sergeant. The crowd caught it, saw the crack widen. Cheers erupted. "Listen to him. Even your own man knows the truth." Marcus shifted his gaze to the younger officer, his voice calm, measured. "Thank you. It takes more courage to break silence than to follow a wrong order." The sergeant's jaw clenched so hard it quivered. He yanked the cuffs higher, one last act of defiance. "You think you can play me in my city?" he barked. "You think a piece of metal in a story makes you untouchable?" A man in the crowd, gray-haired, voice booming, shouted back, "That's not a story, that's the law, and you just broke it." Applause rippled, fast and furious. The balance of power tilted before everyone's eyes. Evans's voice returned from Marcus's phone, crisp, undeniable. "Agent Hall, headquarters confirms receipt of all live feeds. Supervisors are monitoring this incident in real time. Do you want escalation to internal affairs now?" The sergeant's hands froze. Color drained from his face. For the first time, doubt eclipsed his rage. Marcus turned his head, eyes locking on the man who had tried to chain him. His words landed like stones. "You didn't just put cuffs on me. You put cuffs on your own career." The crowd roared. Some clapped, others jeered at the officers, but all of them knew the tide had shifted. And standing in the glow of flashing red and blue, Marcus Hall was no longer the suspect. He was the verdict. The night should have ended there with doubt cracking the cuffs, with witnesses standing tall. But pride dies hard, and the sergeant's pride was a wildfire refusing to burn out. He jerked the cuffs again, voice rising, desperate to drown the truth. "You're a fraud, a liar in a fancy coat. You think that badge makes you better than the rest of us? You're nothing but a criminal in disguise." The insult slammed into the crowd like a fist. Gasps echoed off the marble steps of Atlas Financial Tower. A woman in the front shouted, "You can't talk to him like that." Another man barked, "We saw the seal. That's federal." But the sergeant wasn't speaking to Marcus anymore, he was speaking to his fear. His words tumbled, reckless, louder each time. "You people walk around like the rules don't apply. Not on my street, not in my city. I'll drag you out myself." Phones lifted higher, recording every syllable. The crowd was no longer shocked, they were furious. Their voices collided in a storm of protest. "Racist. Abuse of power. Get him off duty." The younger officer stepped forward again, shaking his head. "Sarge, stop. Every word you say is being recorded. This isn't defense, it's career suicide." For a moment, silence swallowed the block. The red and blue lights flickered across Marcus's calm face. He had not moved, not once. His stillness spoke louder than the sergeant's fury. Then Marcus lifted his phone, his voice measured, cold as steel. "Evans, escalate. Phase 2. The assistant's reply crackled instantly, sharp and unwavering. Phase 2 activated. Internal Affairs has been alerted. Civil Rights Division notified. Every officer's body cam feed has been synced to federal review. Confirm?" Marcus's gaze never left the sergeant's face. Confirmed. The sergeant blinked, faltered. For the first time, his grip on authority felt smaller than the phone in Marcus's hand. His eyes darted to the crowd, to the cameras, to the younger officer who now stood closer to Marcus than to him. The younger man's voice carried, strong enough for everyone to hear. He told you. He warned you. And you didn't listen. The crowd erupted again, clapping, cheering, some chanting, "Justice! Justice!" The sergeant's face flushed crimson. He shouted, but his words drowned in the storm. Marcus lowered his phone, his tone calm but edged with finality. "You tried to humiliate me in front of my own building. You forgot one thing: this street doesn't answer to your voice. It answers to the truth." The cuffs hung useless between them now, not as weapons but as evidence of everything the night had revealed. And for the first time, the sergeant's eyes betrayed it. Fear. The street had turned into a courtroom. Every phone was a witness, every whisper a verdict. The sergeant's rage had nowhere left to go. It collapsed under its own weight. And in the silence that followed, Marcus Hall finally moved. He slid the cuffs off his wrist, slow, deliberate. The metal clinked against the pavement, loud enough to echo off the glass walls of Atlas Financial Tower. His eyes swept the crowd, then returned to the officers. Calm, steady, unshaken. "You've called me a fraud, a trespasser, worse. But tonight, the only thing on trial here is your judgment." Gasps rippled. The younger officer stepped back, caught between awe and relief. The sergeant's mouth opened, but no sound came. Marcus lifted his badge higher, letting the gold seal flash in the police lights. But this time, he didn't just show it, he declared it. "My name is Marcus Hall, Special Agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation." The words struck like lightning. Phones jerked upward, recording the reveal. A woman screamed, "He's FBI!" A man clapped, then another joined, and soon the crowd was roaring. Marcus's voice cut through, strong but controlled. "You didn't just try to arrest me at my own building. You tried to erase me in front of the people I serve. And now every word, every insult, every unlawful order you gave is logged in federal record." The younger officer's face turned pale. He muttered, "Oh God, he's serious." The sergeant, trembling now, tried one last defense. "He's bluffing. You can't—" But Marcus interrupted, his words final, undeniable. "Check your radios. Check your feeds. Washington is already watching." Huh! At that exact moment, static hissed from the officers' radios. Dispatch broke in. "All units, be advised, stand down immediately. Subject is confirmed. Federal agent. Internal Affairs will review. Repeat, stand down." The sergeant froze, color draining from his face. The cuffs that once felt like power now felt like chains around his own career. The younger officer dropped his gaze, ashamed. The crowd erupted in cheers, some chanting Marcus's name, others yelling at the officers. For the first time that night, the spotlight wasn't on suspicion, it was on truth. Marcus lowered the badge, his tone calm but heavy as a gavel. Justice doesn't need to shout, it only needs to arrive. And in that moment, it had. The radios crackled with the order to stand down, but it wasn't just sound, it was a sentence. Every officer froze where they stood. The younger one let out a shaky breath, relief spilling across his face. The sergeant, though, looked like a man whose world had just collapsed. His hands hovered useless in the air, the cuffs dangling, no longer a weapon but evidence. The crowd erupted. Cheers, applause, laughter sharp with justice. Someone shouted, "Told you he was FBI!" Another yelled, "Now who's trespassing?" Phones swung to capture every angle of the sergeant's paling face. Marcus didn't bask in it. He didn't smile. He simply stood tall, his coat shifting in the breeze, his presence filling the street like a verdict. When he finally spoke, his words sliced the night clean. "Evans, log this. Immediate suspension request for Sergeant Daniels and his team. Notify Internal Affairs and Civil Rights Division that federal protocol has been breached." Evans's voice came through crisp, unwavering. "Logged and confirmed. Their names are already in the system. Stand by for further directives." The younger officer swallowed hard, eyes darting between Marcus and the sergeant. Then he stepped back from formation, hands raised. "I won't be part of this," he said, voice cracking but resolute. The crowd roared in approval. The sergeant tried to recover, his voice trembling. You can't just end our careers with one call." Marcus turned, gaze steady, tone surgical. "You ended them the moment you chose bias over duty. My call just makes it official." The sergeant's face drained of color. His shoulders sagged under the weight of inevitability. Around him, the other officers shifted, shame pressing heavier than their badges. From the crowd, a woman laughed, clapping her hands. "That's justice right there," another voice added. "This is what accountability looks like." The chant grew, echoing against the glass towers. "Justice, justice, justice." Marcus raised his voice, not loud, not angry, but commanding. "To everyone here, remember this night. Power that abuses will always answer to power that protects." The cheers swelled. Phones kept recording, but no longer out of fear, out of triumph. The balance had shifted. And standing in the strobe of red and blue, Marcus Hall wasn't just an FBI agent any. The chanting refused to die down. "Justice! Justice!" It rolled across the plaza like a tide no badge could hold back. Phones caught every angle. Every flinch of guilt etched across the officers' faces. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He simply lifted his phone again. "Evans, initiate Phase 3. Forward tonight's footage to Internal Affairs and notify the Department of Justice. I want full review, civil rights violations, unlawful detention, abuse of authority." The line crackled. Evans's reply came sharp, deliberate. "Phase 3 activated. Federal oversight has been alerted. All evidence packages are live in the system." The sergeant's jaw fell slack. He turned to his team, searching for loyalty, for anything solid to stand on. But the younger officer shook his head, refusing to meet his gaze. Another officer muttered, barely audible, "We're done." The crowd caught it. Gasps burst into cheers. One man laughed out loud. "Even your own guys know it's over." A woman with her phone angled high shouted, "Say it louder, we're all witnesses tonight." "Oh." Marcus stepped forward, his coat brushing the cuffs still hanging loose on the pavement. His voice was quiet but unyielding. "You tried to strip me of my dignity. Instead, you stripped yourself of authority. Every second of tonight is carved into record, and the law will finish what I started." The sergeant's face burned crimson. His lips quivered, but no words formed. The authority he clung to was dissolving in real time, on camera, under the weight of truth. The younger officer broke formation entirely, stepping to Marcus's side. "Sir," he said, his voice steady now, "I believe you, and I won't be part of this any longer." The crowd exploded. Cheers, whistles, applause. "That's courage," one man yelled. "That's what policing should look like." The sergeant stumbled back, chest heaving. He looked smaller now, his frame swallowed by the flashing lights, his badge nothing more than a piece of tarnished metal. Marcus scanned the crowd, then leveled his voice so every camera caught it. "This isn't about me. It's about every man and woman who's ever been told they don't belong, even when they were standing on their own ground. Tonight, that ends here." The chant rose again, louder, sharper, undeniable. "Justice, justice, justice." And for the first time, the officers who once advanced with cuffs lowered their eyes, unable to meet the gaze of the people they swore to serve. More. He was the embodiment of justice arriving, steady and undeniable. The sergeant's authority bled out with every second. What once echoed like orders now sounded like pleas swallowed by the crowd's roar. His eyes darted from camera to camera, searching for an escape, but there was none. "Justice! Justice!" the chant thundered, rolling through Atlas Financial Tower's glass walls, bouncing back until it felt like the entire city was watching. Marcus stood still, trench coat falling in clean lines, badge gleaming steady under the lights. He didn't need the crowd to shout for him. His silence commanded more than their noise. Evans's voice came again through his phone, crisp and final. "Agent Hall, confirmation from headquarters. Internal Affairs has frozen the officers' access credentials. Their badges will not scan. Their weapons are locked in the system. Effective immediately, their authority is revoked." The words landed like a hammer. The younger officer glanced down at the scanner on his belt. Its light flickered red. He swallowed hard, then whispered, "It's true." Gasps cut through the crowd, followed by laughter, cheers, applause. A man clapped his hands until they rang. A woman shouted, "They're finished!" The sergeant fumbled with his badge, holding it up like it still meant something. But when he swiped it against the reader on the side patrol car, it buzzed red. Denied. Cameras zoomed in. The crowd roared with vindication. Marcus's voice carried, low but sharp enough to slice through the noise. "You thought you were untouchable. Now even your badge refuses to recognize you." The sergeant's shoulders collapsed inward. His lips trembled, searching for words, but none came. The officers behind him shifted nervously, sweat glistening, eyes downcast. The younger one finally spoke, his tone heavy with resignation. "Sarge, it's over. We're finished." Ugh. The crowd erupted again, half in jeers, half in thunderous applause. Some chanted Marcus's name, others simply raised their phones higher, hungry to capture the exact second injustice unraveled. Marcus let the silence stretch before delivering his next line, voice steady as stone. "This is what happens when you confuse prejudice for power. You lose both." The sergeant staggered back, clutching his useless badge, his face pale under the flashing lights. The weight of humiliation pressed down harder than any pair of cuffs, and for the first time all night, the crowd didn't just see Marcus Hall as a man. They saw him as justice incarnate. The plaza had become a stage, and every eye was fixed on one man. The sergeant, once loud and commanding, now stood trembling, clutching a badge that meant nothing. His voice cracked when he tried to speak, but the crowd drowned him out with chants of justice. Marcus raised his phone again. Calm, steady. "Evans, confirm permanent action. Immediate removal of Sergeant Daniels and his team from the force. Their records sealed for federal review. Effective tonight." Evans's voice came back sharp as a blade. "Confirmed. Access terminated. Employment status revoked. Their profiles are locked pending prosecution." The words fell like a gavel. The younger officer closed his eyes, exhaling long and heavy. He looked at Marcus not with defiance, but with something closer to respect. He stepped aside, away from his disgraced team, as if severing himself from their collapse. The sergeant's knees buckled. He staggered forward, desperate. "You can't do this. You don't have that kind of power." Marcus's gaze didn't waver. His words cut clean through the night. "I warned you. Authority abused is authority surrendered. And tonight, you surrendered all of it." The crowd erupted. Applause, shouts, whistles. A woman near the front screamed, "That's what accountability looks like!" A man shouted, "Write it down, this is history." Phones captured the sergeant's collapse from every angle, broadcasting humiliation lived to thousands. One by one, the other officers lowered their heads. Their radios buzzed with final confirmation. Credentials revoked, access denied. Their weapons were already locked back at headquarters. The system had turned its back on them. Marcus didn't move closer. He didn't need to. His voice, low but resolute, carried farther than any siren. "You tried to make me the criminal. Tonight you made yourselves the evidence." The sergeant dropped his badge. It hit the pavement with a hollow clang, bouncing once before lying still. Cameras zoomed in. The crowd gasped, then erupted into cheers so loud they rattled the glass towers above. Marcus looked over the sea of faces, strangers, neighbors, witnesses. Then he turned back to the disgraced men. "Escort them out. They don't belong here anymore." Oh, two internal affairs agents, already called to the scene, stepped forward from the edge of the plaza, silent, professional, undeniable. The crowd parted as they approached, the chant swelling once more. "Justice, justice, justice." And for the first time all night, Marcus allowed himself a breath of quiet satisfaction. The balance had been restored not with rage, not with fists, but with truth and power wielded precisely. The sirens had gone silent. The plaza that once pulsed with chaos now vibrated with triumph. Phones still hovered in the air, but the fear behind them was gone. What remained was awe. Marcus stood in the center, trench coat steady against the night breeze, the FBI badge gleaming like a seal of final judgment. Around him, the crowd was no longer a cluster of bystanders, they were a chorus of witnesses. The disgraced officers were escorted away, their steps heavy, their heads bowed. The sergeant muttered something under his breath, but it dissolved into the roar of the crowd, swallowed by the justice he had tried so hard to silence. Marcus let the noise settle, then spoke. His voice was not loud, yet it carried farther than the sirens had, steady as if the city itself leaned in to hear. "Tonight you saw the truth unfold. Justice doesn't need fists. It doesn't need rage. It needs clarity. It needs courage." He paused, scanning the faces lit by phone screens. "And it needs witnesses. Every one of you standing here, you are the proof that silence is no longer an option." The crowd roared, some clapping, some chanting his name. But Marcus raised a hand, and the noise softened, pulled back into silence. He glanced at the fallen badge on the pavement, then lifted his eyes once more. "They thought humiliation could erase me. They thought prejudice could define me. But power misused always collapses under its own weight. Tonight wasn't about me, it was about every person who has ever been told they don't belong on their own ground." The air tightened, every phone still. every heart waiting for the final line. Marcus's voice cut through, calm but devastating, a sentence meant to live beyond the night. "I don't need the video, I am the evidence." The words detonated across the plaza. Gasps turned into applause, applause into thunder. The chant returned fiercer, louder, unstoppable. "Justice, justice, justice." Marcus slid his badge back into his coat and turned toward Atlas Financial Tower, walking past the flashing lights with the dignity of a man who had nothing left to prove. The crowd parted for him, not out of fear, but out of reverence. The cameras followed until he disappeared through the glass doors, leaving behind a street forever changed. And just like that, the story was complete, not with noise, but with silence heavy enough to echo.